The fork clattered against my plate. I hadn't meant to drop it, but the words hit hard, sharp, loud. "Stop acting like you own everything. You can't tell me to leave," Darren said. He leaned back in the chair like he'd just told a joke. Laughter burst around the table, quick, careless, cruel. Even Madeline giggled behind her wineglass. I stared at the green beans on my plate. 16 seconds. That's how long they laughed. I counted everyone. I sat still, back straight. My hand trembled, once then stopped. The silver ring on my finger, the one his father gave me, dug into my skin. The table was full. Darren's co-workers, a few friends, 2 people I barely knew. He called it a celebration dinner for closing a real estate deal. But everything on the table had come from me. The condo, the business starter loan, even the dishes. I poured the wine. I cooked the roast. And still, "Stop acting like you own everything." I didn't look at him. I didn't say a word. I pressed my napkin to my lap and kept eating. Slowly, carefully, no reaction. Just the noise of forks, glasses, and my heart beating like a drum I couldn't quiet. After dessert, the guests filtered out one by one. A few said, "Thank you to Darren, not to me." One woman hugged Madeline and whispered, "You'll have it all soon." I pretended not to hear. Darren walked past me, jacket slung over his shoulder phone to his ear. Didn't stop. Didn't glance back. He left his plate on the table like I was still the maid. The apartment quieted. I stood stacked. The dishes ran the sink. My hands moved by habit. Soap. Rinse. Dry. Wipe the counter. My body worked. My mind screamed. He used to beg me to pick him up early from school. Cry when I left him at camp. Ask for extra ketchup. I used to kiss his forehead even when he pushed me away. And now this. The laughter still echoed down the hall. I walked to the bathroom, turned on the faucet, splashed water on my face, looked in the mirror. Lines deeper than last year. Eyes duller. Jaw clenched. What do you do when your child becomes someone you raised him not to be? You wait. You stay quiet. But not because you're weak, because you're watching. I stepped out. Dried my hands, walked to the kitchen and poured the last of the wine. Red. Dry. Slightly bitter. I took it to the living room, sat down slowly, and stared out the window. The city moved outside like nothing had happened. Like mothers weren't humiliated every day in their own homes. I didn't cry. I wouldn't give him that. In the silence, I reached for the coaster drawer. My fingers brushed the edge of a small envelope, thick, sealed, familiar. The name on the corner, L. Goldman, attorney at law. I left it where it was. Not yet. Not tonight. I finished my wine, rinsed the glass, and placed it upside down in the drying rack. Then I turned out the lights and walked to my room. Each step steady. Each breath measured. Tomorrow I'd make his coffee like I always did. But something had shifted. Something he wouldn't notice until it was far too late. I slammed the cupboard shut. Not hard enough to start a fight. Just enough to feel the wood respond? I pulled 2 mugs down his chipped one from college, hers with the golden rim. Mine stayed where it was. The coffee brewed, slow, steady, familiar hum. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. They came into the kitchen still in sleepwear. Darren scrolled through his phone. Madeline yawned, tied her robe tighter, sat without looking at me. I poured their coffee. 1 splash of oat milk for her. Nothing for him. Set the mugs down. No thanks. Just a nod from Darren, eyes still on the screen. He muttered, "Need to call Brad at 10. We're restructuring the brand. Gonna pitch a shift in ownership to the board." Madeline leaned in. "You should just take over, babe. She's not even active anymore. She's not stopping me." They didn't lower their voices. I stood at the sink, wiping the same spot on the counter. Over and over, my back to them. Steam from the pot rising beside me, curling into the air and vanishing. "She'll hand it over," Madeline said. She always folds. You just have to make it sound like it's her idea. I didn't fold. I allowed. And that's different. I turned around. Darren looked up, met my eyes for half a second, then went back to his phone. We're hosting again Friday night, he said. Clients. Don't worry, we'll handle food. You just need to be present. Madeline laughed into her mug. Present. Like a vase. Like furniture. I nodded. Quiet. The kitchen was clean. Sunlight stretched across the tiles. I could smell the toast burning in the toaster, but no one moved to stop it. Let it burn. Madeline left her lipstick stain on the rim, stood, and grabbed her laptop. Darren followed her to the dining table where she spread out documents I'd never seen. I caught glimpses, valuation charts, potential asset transfers, bolded figures. My name wasn't on anything. I poured a fresh cup for myself, sat by the window, and sipped. The heat didn't reach me. I stared out at the sidewalk below. A woman walked her dog. A delivery truck parked by the curb. Life moved on. Behind me, they laughed again, low, smug. I'd raised him to be confident. I hadn't meant for him to become this. I drained half the cup. It was bitter. The coffee had sat too long before I drank it, cold around the edges. I left it unfinished and rose. In the hallway, I passed the closed door to the spare bedroom. Their boxes had spread in there. Clothing I hadn't approved, jewelry trays, documents that didn't belong. At the end of the hall, my office, locked. I unlocked it, closed the door behind me, sat at the old desk with the chipped edge. I opened the drawer. The sealed envelope still sat there. Same place. Same name, L. Goldman. I pulled it out this time, slid it halfway open. Inside, the original corporate charter, signed in my handwriting. Dated 2004. My father's name still listed as silent partner. Darren's name nowhere on it. I placed it on the desk. Not ready to act. Not yet, but I'd start watching. I clicked open the desktop computer, opened the company's financial dashboard. 3 unauthorized withdrawals in the past 2 months. I started taking notes. I yanked the drawer and it slid open too easily. Not stuck like usual. Not how I left it. Files shuffled, envelopes bent. My passport halfway out of its sleeve. I froze. My breath caught somewhere behind my ribs. Then I pulled the drawer all the way out and started counting. Insurance folder. There. Deed. Still there, edges curled, bank statements creased. Someone had flipped through everything. I closed the drawer gently, too gently. My hands shook so I clenched them, nails against palm. Harder. Then I turned. Madeline stood in the doorway, arms crossed, head tilted, like I'd interrupted her. She didn't flinch, just smiled, looking for something. My mouth stayed closed. She stepped into the room, eyes scanning the furniture like it was inventory. I needed our lease agreement, she said. Darren said you kept important stuff here. Our lease? I asked. My voice came out level, not sharp, not soft. Well, she laughed lightly. We live here too. It's not just yours anymore. The room went still. She looked around. We'll probably remodel. This desk is classic, but not really functional. I didn't answer. I didn't blink. She moved closer, trailing her finger across the edge of the shelf like dust offended her. You know Darren's thinking about putting all the assets into a family trust, she said. So things are easier. Shared. Unified. Easier for who she paused. Just a beat too long. For the future, she answered. For the family. I walked past her. Left the drawer unlocked. She wanted to see what I'd do. Wanted me to argue. I didn't give her that. Back in the kitchen, Darren sat at the table, typing. He didn't look up. I went to the pantry, checked the top shelf. The lockbox was still there. Untouched. I didn't open it. Just needed to see it was where I left it. It held one thing, the original title to this building. Signed by my father. Handed to me the week before he passed. It was in my name alone. I closed the pantry, stepped back into the hallway, voices behind a closed door. Madeline's, she's slow. She won't do anything. Darren. She doesn't have to. I'm already moving assets over. She'll sign whatever. She won't even notice. Silence. Then laughter. Low. Familiar. I walked into my room, shut the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the floor. There's a kind of pain that doesn't rise, doesn't explode. It sinks. This was sinking. I stood again, opened the closet, reached into the back for the shoebox where I kept the backup flash drive, labeled in red copies. I plugged it into my laptop, checked the folders, company history, tax returns, ownership logs. I made 2 more backups, one to a new drive, one to the cloud, quiet, simple steps. Afterward, I walked back to the kitchen. The coffee pot was empty. I washed it, dried it, set it down with care. Darren looked up once. Can we take the SUV tomorrow? We need it for the furniture run. I nodded. I handed him the keys. I stopped halfway down the hall. Their door was cracked, voices spilling out. She's useless, Darren said. His tone wasn't sharp. It was casual, easy, like he was talking about a broken chair. Just an old woman living off Dad's shadow. Madeline laughed softly. She's a prop, a backdrop. The only reason people still come to dinners is because they think she's funding it. She is, he replied. And she doesn't even know how much longer she'll last. Once she's out, the place is ours. My fingers tightened around the railing. The wood dug into my skin. I stood there, not moving, not breathing, listening to my own son strip me down to nothing. Madeline's voice floated out again, sweet and sharp. We'll have to get rid of her old things, the furniture, those ugly paintings. She'll cling to them. But Darren, she can't stop us. She doesn't have the strength. Then we'll push harder, he said. She'll sign. She always does. I backed away, slow, careful not to creak the floorboards. Each step felt heavier than the last. In my room, I shut the door quietly, sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped so tight they ached. The silence roared. I remembered every night I stayed up running numbers, planning the business, every dollar scraped, every risk taken, and now I was useless. I pressed my palms to my eyes. No tears came, just heat, just rage sharp and steady sitting under my ribs. I stood, walked to the dresser, pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside, photographs. Darren at 5, holding a baseball bat too big for his hands. Darren at 12, standing by his science fair project. Darren at 18, cap and gown, crooked his grin wide because I had shouted louder than anyone in the crowd. I stared at the pictures until the edges blurred. Then I slid them back, closed the drawer, and stood taller. From the living room came the sound of the television. Their laughter rose again, muffled through walls that used to hold family. I walked to the desk, opened my laptop, and clicked through folders. Documents I had saved for years blinked back at me. Contracts, deeds, shares. Everything they believed was already theirs. I created a new folder, labeled it Not Useless. Inside, I began dragging copies, one by one, slow, deliberate. The voices outside my room grew louder. Darren's laugh, Madeline's sharp reply. I typed out a note on a blank page. 3 words. Nothing more. I am watching. I saved it inside the folder. Closed the laptop. Then I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening as my own son's voice carried down the hall, stripping me of everything but the one thing he couldn't see. Resolve. I dragged the cedar box out from under the bed. It scraped against the floorboards, heavy, old, scarred at the corners. My father gave it to me the week Darren was born. He'd said, "Keep what matters inside. Never let it out of your sight." I hadn't opened it in years. The brass latch clicked. The lid creaked. The faint smell of cedar rose up mixed with dust and memory. Inside, everything was as I left it. Folders wrapped in string, yellowed envelopes. One manila file thicker than the rest. I lifted it carefully. My name stared back from the first page. The deed to the penthouse. Still in my name. No amendments, no transfers. The signature mine, still bold, still binding. Beneath it, the company shares. Dormant, but valid. 48%. My father left them with me, never reassigned. Darren's name was nowhere. My hands steadied as I turned each page. Ownership logs, registration papers, renewal letters stamped and filed. Everything that mattered. All in my name. I closed the folder and set it aside. Reached deeper. Found an old photograph, me and my father standing in front of the building ribbon-cutting ceremony. Darren was 10, fidgeting with the giant scissors bored out of his mind. I remembered whispering, "This will be yours one day if you respect it." Respect? That was the condition. Not entitlement, not greed. I put the photograph back, picked up the shares again. My thumb traced the embossed seal. The paper was stiff, unyielding, proof that the empire he flaunted wasn't his to flaunt. A noise in the hall made me close the lid quickly. Footsteps, light, fast. Madeline's. She called through the door. "We're ordering out. Want anything?" "No," I said. My voice was calm, even. "All right," she sang, drifting away. I slid the box back into place, pushed it deep until it touched the wall. Then I stood breathing slow, shoulders squared. They thought I was powerless. They thought my silence meant surrender. But I held the papers, the signatures, the legal weight. I walked to the desk, opened my laptop, and typed a message to Goldman. Short, simple. "We need to meet." I hit send. Then I leaned back in the chair, listening to the muffled sound of Darren laughing in the living room, bragging into his phone, already planning a future that wasn't his to own. The papers waited in the cedar box, safe. But I wouldn't leave them there forever. The reply came at 6:42 a.m. "Tomorrow. My office. 10 sharp. Bring the documents." I deleted the message after reading it twice. Got up, made the coffee, poured it black. Darren walked in first, still in his wrinkled shirt from yesterday. He grunted something that wasn't quite morning. Madeline followed, scrolling her phone, already whispering about brunch reservations. I placed their mugs down. She didn't even glance up. Darren sat sipping slowly. "We might loop in Brad as a co-investor. He's ready to move fast. Just needs a majority sign-off." I rinsed the spoon, kept my hands busy. "He's got connections," Madeline added. "Could open new markets. But we'd need to streamline the board, get rid of old signatures." They spoke in code like I wasn't standing 3 feet away, like I was a vase or a coat hook. I smiled to myself, let them plan. Later that afternoon, I pulled out the documents again, reread every page, made clean copies, labeled each one, placed them in a navy folder. I left no trace. By evening, Darren had his music on. Madeline opened wine. They danced a little in the kitchen. I watched from the hallway. She whispered something in his ear, and he laughed too loud. The kind of laugh that didn't care who heard. I walked back to my room, locked the door, set an alarm, laid the folder on the chair beside my bed like it needed guarding. And I didn't sleep. I slammed the fridge shut. The table was already crowded. Plates of fruit, muffins, bacon. Madeline had invited 6 people I didn't recognize, neighbors, co-workers, hangers-on. They filled the dining room with loud voices and louder laughter. Darren stood at the head of the table like a host. Not a son, not a guest in my home, a host. "Big changes coming," he announced, lifting his glass of orange juice. "We're rebranding Vaughn Enterprises. New image, new leadership." Forks paused. All eyes turned to him. Finally, one of the men said, "It's about time." Madeline beamed. Darren's vision is fresh modern. He knows how to grow what's been stagnant. Stagnant. The word burned. I buttered my toast slowly, the knife steady in my hand. Not one person asked me what I thought. Not one looked in my direction. Darren kept going. We'll restructure the board, streamline operations. My father's legacy deserves an update. My father's, not his. He never corrected himself. More applause, clinking glasses. One woman leaned in, whispering, "This is going to make you a star, Darren." I sipped my coffee. Bitter. Perfect. Of course, Darren said there's paperwork. Old signatures. We'll smooth that out. It's just a formality. Formality. I set my cup down gently. The china clicked against the saucer. Madeline turned toward me briefly, lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Clarice, isn't it exciting watching Darren step into his role?" I held her gaze. Said nothing. She laughed lightly and turned back to the table. Conversation surged again. I sat there, quiet, listening. Every word fed me more than the food. They thought they were building momentum. All I saw was a train running out of track. Darren tapped his phone, showed a mock-up of a new logo. Sleek. Sterile. No trace of the past. My father's name reduced to a thin line of text. People leaned forward, admiring it. "This is the future," Darren said. "No more clinging to outdated methods. It's mine to lead now." Mine. I folded my napkin, placed it on the plate. My appetite was gone. The room spun with voices, jokes, toasts, promises. I stayed seated, but my mind walked elsewhere, back to my father's office the day he handed me the first share certificate. His hand had been steady, his words sharper than any contract. "It will stay in your name. That way no one can strip it from you." And no one would. I rose from the table. No one noticed. I moved through the kitchen, set my empty cup in the sink, and pressed my palm against the cool counter. The laughter echoed behind me. The promises. The arrogance. I opened the drawer by the stove, pulled out the small notebook I kept hidden under the dish towels, flipped to a blank page, began writing. Names, dates, Darren's words, Madeline's promises. Every phrase burned into the page. I wrote until the pen dug grooves in the paper. Then I closed it, slid it back under the towels, and straightened the drawer. The brunch roared on. Darren's voice carried above the rest. Confident, loud, unchecked. I washed my hands, slowly dried them on the cloth, and listened as if I had all the time in the world. I punched in the code. The ATM screen blinked. I tapped through the menu, selected checking, and entered the amount, $200. Enough for groceries and a quiet lunch out. Transaction declined. I blinked. Tried again. Same card. Same PIN. Declined. I stepped back, heart kicking against my ribs. Inside the bank, the air was too cold, the carpet too clean. I walked straight to the front desk. "I'd like to make a withdrawal from my checking account," I said. The teller took my card. "Just a moment." She typed, paused, frowned. "I'm sorry, Ms. Vaughn, but this account now requires dual authorization for any withdrawal over $50. My stomach dropped. "Since when?" She checked. "Last week. A new limitation added by the secondary account holder, Darren Vaughn." I kept my face blank. And I wasn't notified. Her smile strained. "You'd have to speak to Mr. Vaughn about that." I thanked her and left. The sun outside burned hotter than it should have. I walked slowly, carefully. Every step felt sharper. Back home, I opened the banking portal on my laptop. The joint account, my name first is second now, showed a notice, limited access. Authorized co-owner required for transactions above threshold. I scrolled through the history. Darren had been withdrawing regularly, $600 here, $1, $200. They're always marked business development or investment bridge. He'd used my money to fund his takeover. I stared at the screen, fingers cold. This wasn't a mistake. It was strategy. A soft knock at the door. Madeline peeked in without waiting. "Oh, good, you're up. Darren and I are looking at new conference chairs. The old ones feel dated." She caught the screen over my shoulder. Didn't flinch. I didn't move. "Did you know he restricted my access?" She smiled. "It's a safety protocol. You're under a lot of stress. Darren just wants to help manage things. My name's on the account." She shrugged. "You trust him, don't you?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "That's changing." She laughed once tight, dismissive, and left. I turned back to the laptop, took a screenshot of the account page, saved it, then opened my backup folder and uploaded the image. Next, I pulled out the paper folder from the cedar box. The shares, the deed, still intact, still mine. I added the bank records to the growing file. Let them think I was locked out. Let them believe I'd fold. The truth had weight, and I was stacking it page by page. I pulled out my phone, texted Goldman. "They restricted my access. I want to transfer my personal funds." Quietly, I hit send. Then I powered the phone off, placed it face down, and walked to the kitchen. Darren and Madeline were laughing at something on his screen. She leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't even notice me walk past. I opened the cabinet, took down my own mug, the one they never used, and filled it. I sipped. Bitter again. No sugar, no cream. Just the taste of waking up. Madeline turned toward me, still smiling. "Oh, by the way, we're changing the garage code this week, for security." I nodded. But I'd already copied the last passcode log from the building system. Stored. Dated. Let them change codes. I was done knocking. I slammed the door to my office and locked it. Midnight. The only time they stopped pretending I didn't exist. I pulled out the folder, flipped the lid of the scanner, and fed the first document through. The deed. Next, corporate share certificates. Originals. My name printed in black ink. Date stamped, embossed, still legal, still binding. Scan. Click. Save. I named each file carefully. Neutral titles. No red flags. No drama. Just the truth. 201 Penthouse deed.pdf. Shares. VaughnCo.pdf. Bank restriction. Notice.png. One after another. Then I opened the browser and logged into the encrypted drive. New folder. Clarice. Backup. Password protected. Two-factor authentication. I uploaded everything. Next emails. I opened the thread from Darren last month. The one where he said, "No need to worry about renewals. I'll sign for you." Attached was a form he never told me he filed. Power of attorney temporary limited, but dangerous in the wrong hands. He signed it. I didn't. But it had both names scanned on the page. I hadn't noticed before. I highlighted the signature block. Scanned the original I kept in a drawer, unsigned blank. I placed them side by side. Different stroke weights. The scanned one was fake. I saved it all. Uploaded to the drive. The folder grew heavier by the minute. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I clicked record on the voice memo app and spoke quietly. March 14th, 11:53 p.m. This is Clarice Vaughn. I am in possession of the following original legal documents: the deed to the penthouse at 201 Jefferson Tower, the 48% share certificate of Vaughn Enterprises issued under my father's name and transferred solely to me, and multiple unauthorized financial transactions initiated by Darren Vaughn. I have not granted power of attorney. Any signature suggesting otherwise is fraudulent. I saved the memo. Backed it up to the drive, then again to a flash. 2 copies, one hidden in the cedar box, the other in my purse. I shut the laptop. My hands were steady, no tremble, no hesitation. I walked down the hall, stopped by Darren's office. The door was open, light still on. His laptop sat charging, screen dim. I stepped closer. On the corkboard behind his desk were sketches of a new brand, his name at the center. No trace of mine. I stared for a long time, then turned away. Back in my room, I hid the flash drive under the liner of my jewelry box, next to the wedding ring I hadn't worn in a decade. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the silence stretch out, the kind of silence that only comes before a storm. Then I got up, pulled the spare phone from the drawer. A cheap prepaid I never registered. I texted Goldman again, files uploaded. I'll bring the originals Thursday. Let's be done with this. I turned off the light, and I slept with the folder under my pillow. I slid the folder across the desk. Goldman didn't speak. He opened it slowly, page by page, his eyes narrowing with each document. The morning sun hit the side of his face. He didn't blink. "The deed's clean," he said finally. "Unbroken chain of ownership. Never transferred." I nodded. He tapped the share certificate. 48%. Still yours. Darren can't touch it unless you release it. He'd need your signature, your consent, and a full board vote to restructure. He has none of those, I said. He leaned back. Does he even know I looked him in the eye? He thinks I'm dead weight with a coffee habit. Goldman chuckled, but I didn't. This, he said, holding up the forged power of attorney, is a crime. A bad one. I don't want prison. I want proof. He nodded. We'll have a forensic analyst look at it. Quietly. Meanwhile, I suggest we begin filing for asset protection. Lock things down before he moves again. I exhaled. Long, slow. How fast can we move? 2 days, he said. 3, if we need to reroute through the trust account your father left. I paused. That account. I hadn't touched it in years. The number had always been there, just a whisper in the back of my mind. Do it, I said. Goldman gathered the papers, placed them in a secure envelope, and pressed the intercom. Lisa, schedule the filings. Priority. He turned back to me. He's going to lose his mind when he finds out. I smiled for the first time in weeks. A full smile. Quiet. Controlled. Let him lose it. I stood, gathered my purse. My steps felt lighter leaving the office, my spine straighter. Outside, the wind had picked up. I pulled my coat tighter, crossed the street, and stopped at the coffee cart. Black, no sugar, I said. The vendor handed me the cup. Rough day, I looked at the steam rising from the lid. Not anymore. Back at the Penthouse, I entered the building through the side elevator. No grand entrances, no chance meetings. Upstairs, the sound of Darren's voice echoed down the hall. He was pacing the living room phone to his ear. No, listen, I am the lead. I'll send you the revised pitch deck. The board just hasn't caught up yet, that's all. Madeline leaned on the back of the couch, scrolling. Don't forget to mention the rebranding. Everyone loves clean slates. I walked past them, calm, quiet. No one looked up. I sipped my coffee. Took it to my room. Closed the door gently. Sat at my desk. Opened my notebook. Wrote down the date. Drew a small check mark. Then I added 2 words under it. He doesn't know. And that's exactly how I wanted to keep it. I signed the final page. Goldman turned it around, stamped it, and placed it on top of the others. That's it, he said. It's all filed. Secured. The room was quiet, just the hum of the old ceiling vent above us. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a clean blue folder. Thicker than before. Tighter. He slid it across the table. Everything's here. The trust confirms your name as the sole beneficiary. The Penthouse is now under a protective clause. Any sale, renovation, or transfer requires your handwritten approval. No one touches it without your say. I opened the folder. Inside, the documents felt heavier than paper. And the company I asked. He pointed to the middle tab. Your shares are locked. We've filed a hold on any board-level changes without your presence. Darren can't rebrand, sell, or restructure without triggering an audit, and that will lead back to the forged POA. He's out of moves unless you give him one. I closed the folder. Goldman leaned back. Clarice, you have every right to confront him now. Press charges. Take it public. You'd win. I shook my head. That's not how this ends. He studied me. Then how I want him to keep thinking he's already won. He didn't press. Just nodded once, then packed up his copy. If you need to move assets, discreetly call me. I've routed your accounts to an individual holding. His name's nowhere near it. I stood, smoothed my coat, picked up the folder. He held the door for me. Whatever happens next, just know it's yours again. I stepped out into the cold hallway, walked slowly, one hand on the edge of the folder, the other still curled from tension. The receptionist nodded as I passed. I didn't smile back. Not yet. Outside, the city moved fast, but I didn't rush. I took the long way home. Past the old Vaughn building, my father's name still etched on the brass plate, untouched. I stopped, looked at it, then I kept walking. By the time I reached the elevator at home, Darren's voice was echoing through the speaker in the lobby. Loud, abrasive. Tell them I'll be running things by Q3. We're not waiting on old paperwork. I rode the elevator up, listening. Each floor ticked by like a countdown. At the Penthouse, Madeline was in the kitchen, wiping the counter, dressed like she was expecting a camera crew. Darren's on a call with the new designer, she said, not looking at me. They want to knock down the north wall and open the space. I stepped past her. Clarice, she asked, hand on her hip. Are you even going to ask what it'll look like? No. I walked down the hall, entered my room, locked the door, opened the drawer under the cedar box, placed the folder inside, smoothed the edges, closed it. Then I sat at the desk, picked up my pen, and under yesterday's note wrote, "Let them decorate the walls." I still own the foundation. I changed the locks before sunrise. The locksmith came at 5:40 a.m. Sharp, no questions asked. He worked fast, eyes down, hands steady. I paid in cash. No receipt. No name on the invoice, but mine. Darren and Madeline wouldn't notice until it mattered. By 8, I was at the law office again. Not Goldman this time, this one specialized in estate planning. Straightforward, I told him. No complications. No family named. He hesitated, pen hovering. None. He drafted it. I read every word. Will trust updates and a new power of attorney assigning my authority to a third-party trustee, a woman in Oregon I'd met years ago through my father's foundation. Neutral, clean, irrevocable. I signed everything in black ink. No handshake. No conversation. Back home, I stored the originals in the fireproof box under my bed. I left a single copy in the locked drawer in the laundry room. They never went in there. At noon, Madeline knocked. Didn't wait for me to answer. Do you want salmon or chicken for dinner? Darren's inviting some people over? I stared at her. Whatever works. She blinked, unsure, then nodded and walked off. By 3, I'd contacted the property manager and changed the elevator access codes. Floor 23, the penthouse now required a private fob. I had 2 made. One stayed on my keyring. The other I mailed to Goldman with a note. Keep this. Do not return it. Then I closed my laptop. Walked into the main room. Darren stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, gesturing at blueprints laid across the table. A young woman sat beside him, nodding. Designer. We're opening up this wall here, Darren said, tracing the edge. Tear down the partition. Make room for a conference nook. Think West Coast minimalism. High-end feel. I didn't speak. He finally looked up. Mom, you're okay with that, right? It'll boost the value. I looked at the plans. Sure. It's your vision. He grinned. Exactly. The designer smiled, but she glanced at me, confused. I could tell something about my tone, maybe. Something not matching the script. I walked away. In the hallway, I pulled open the linen closet. Inside, behind the towels, I'd stashed another copy of the will, sealed. Labeled only with a date. I checked it. Still dry. Still untouched. Downstairs, the door buzzed delivery. I buzzed them in. Grabbed the package myself before Darren noticed. Inside, a prepaid international SIM and a small GPS tag. I slipped the SIM into the backup phone. The GPS I placed in the lining of my purse. I wasn't running, but I was making sure they never knew where I stood until it was too late. By nightfall, I brewed coffee in the small French press I kept hidden. I poured 1 cup. No sugar, no cream. I sipped slowly, standing at the kitchen window while they laughed in the living room. Madeline called out, "You don't want to come sit. Maybe later." I walked back to my room, past the locked closet, the cedar box, the drawer with the codes. Everything was in place. I sat on the bed, pulled my notebook to my lap, and wrote 2 more words beneath the last note. Foundation reinforced. I pressed play. The footage loaded slowly, grainy, but clear enough. Darren, March 6th, 4:12 p.m. He stood at the teller's counter at Vaughn Enterprises' downtown branch. No hesitation, no disguise. He smiled, signed a slip, took the envelope. Thick, no briefcase, just his jacket pocket. I paused the video, screenshot, saved. Then I pulled the second clip. March 13th. Same branch, different tie, same routine. This time the withdrawal was larger, labeled Operations, Advance. But there were no operations approved that week. I checked the ledger twice. Screenshot. Save. I opened the folder on my desktop internal audit and dropped the new files inside. Then I opened the financial report from the last quarter. His expense tags were vague client hospitality brand research lead acquisition. I knew what those words really meant. New suits, steak dinners, a weekend in Santa Barbara for him and Madeline. He was siphoning from the company like it was his allowance. I pulled up the internal policy binder originally drafted by my father and highlighted section 6.3. Any withdrawal exceeding $5,000 must be approved by a board officer not directly benefiting from the transaction. He had no approval, no oversight, just a sense of entitlement. I printed the binder page, printed the transaction receipts, clipped them together. At the bottom of the page, I wrote in red ink, Violation X2, March 6th. March 13th. I filed the packet in the manila folder labeled Strike 1, slid it into the drawer under the bed next to trust docs and elevator code logs. Then I opened my notes, added the new entries. Unauthorized withdrawals confirmed, security footage preserved, matching policy section identified. The list was growing. Quietly, cleanly. I stood. My back ached from hours at the desk. In the kitchen, Darren was laughing. His voice echoed off the walls. "We'll tell them the funds were used for outreach. No one checks these things unless you hand it to them." Madeline giggled. "I told you no one reads the fine print. I walked in. They didn't stop." Madeline turned. "Clarice, we're thinking of opening a secondary branch under Darren's name. Just a shell company to filter vendor deals. It's how things are done now?" I stared at her. "And whose money runs through the shell?" She blinked, smiled like I'd made a joke. "Everyone's, technically." Darren waved it off. "It's strategy, Mom. You wouldn't get it." "No," I said. "I probably wouldn't." I poured a small glass of water. No coffee, no steam to hide behind. Darren tapped his phone. "Oh, and I might need you to sign something later this week, legal but quick. Just a merger clause." I nodded once. "Leave it on the counter." He grinned. "Perfect." I turned, walked back to my room, closed the door. Back at the desk, I took out one more blank label, pressed it onto a new folder. Strike 2, pending. Then I sat back, listened to the sound of them celebrating their cleverness, and waited for the lights to come on. I zipped the dress myself. No mirror. I didn't need one. It had been hanging in the back of my closet for 4 years, tags still on. Madeline once said it was too loud for someone your age. Tonight, it was perfect. The car pulled up to the reception hall just after 6. A white banner hung over the entrance, Vaughn Enterprises, Investor Preview and Brand Reveal. I walked in. Heads turned, then looked away unsure. Recognition took time. Champagne floated by on trays. Waitstaff glided between pillars. The room pulsed with controlled ego. I kept to the edge, watched. Darren stood near the center navy suit tie, slightly crooked, beaming like a man who thought the floor belonged to him. This isn't just a pivot, he said to the cluster of guests. It's a reinvention, a total refresh. My team and I have restructured the approach, cut old fat, added new blood. Laughter. Glasses clinked. A man nodded. You must have had some strong backing to move so fast. Darren smirked. It helps when your board's aligned. We don't hold on to outdated attachments. I stepped closer. Quiet. Still. He didn't see me. Of course, some legacy structures were delicate, he went on, but we've streamlined them. It's all mine now, really. Madeline appeared at his elbow. Sleek dress, painted smile. She caught sight of me and froze. Her eyes narrowed. I held her gaze, then turned and walked toward the investors. The CFO Bryant spotted me. Clarice. He reached out startled. You look present, I said. He glanced at Darren, then back to me. I didn't know you were coming. I RSVP'd directly, I lied. Someone handed me a glass. I took it. Didn't sip. The next hour moved slowly. I listened, watched. Darren bragged, overpromised, dodged questions with buzzwords. Madeline hovered. She laughed at all the right moments, corrected dates when he stumbled, reminded him of numbers when he reached. But her eyes kept darting back to me. I didn't move. I smiled. I nodded. I asked polite, pointed questions, quiet ones, that made younger investors glance twice. And when the project lead showed off the new logo design, I tilted my head and said, that font's close to the original. My father used it in 1984 for the first newsletter. Everyone paused. Darren cleared his throat. Well, we're paying homage to the roots. I smiled. Good. It'd be a shame to lose what built all this. The room shifted. Not loudly. Just a breath. Just enough. Madeline came over as the crowd thinned, her voice low. Why are you here, invitation, I said. You're undermining him. No, I said calm. I'm remembering what's mine. She opened her mouth, closed it. Then Darren laughed too loud behind her, clapped someone on the shoulder, and the next pitch began. I left without saying goodbye. Back in the car, I folded my hands over my lap. The dress didn't wrinkle. The driver asked. Home for now? I said. As the city lights blurred past the window, I pictured the room behind me. The way a few of them had looked at me then, at Darren. Not all of them believed his story anymore. Some had started remembering mine. I stepped onto the stage. No lights. No announcement. Just me. My heels clicked against the polished wood floor as the room settled into a hush. The annual shareholders meeting had begun like every other coffee-catered fruit handshakes, staged smiles. Darren played the part well. He'd opened with a speech full of empty numbers and shiny phrases, vertical growth branding alignment, strategic liquidation. He was halfway through his next big promise when I stood. At first, no one reacted. I walked to the front, folder in hand. Goldman followed, calm, steady. Darren's voice stumbled mid-sentence. We, the CFO, leaned forward. Someone in the third row raised a phone. I turned to face the crowd. My name is Clarice Vaughn. All heads turned. I was the sole shareholder of this company when my father passed in 1996. I have never sold, transferred, or relinquished majority control. Murmurs rippled. A man coughed. I set the folder on the table and opened it. Goldman handed out copies. Darren stepped forward. Mom, Clarice, this isn't the time. This is exactly the time, I said. My voice didn't shake. Goldman cleared his throat. The documents in front of you show uncontested proof of ownership. Share transfers void. Board votes invalid. Signatures unauthorized. The majority stake has remained in Mrs. Vaughn's name since the company's inception. The room froze. I turned to face Darren. You've made decisions without legal authority. You've redirected funds. You've spoken for a company that never belonged to you. He blinked, color draining. This isn't personal, I said. This is corporate. Madeline stood up in the back. This is a witch hunt. He built this place from the ground up, a board member spoke over her. Your name isn't on anything, Ms. Landry. Please sit. I kept going. Effective today, I said, I resume full operational control. Interim management will be reassigned. Financial audits will begin. Pending results, permanent roles will be reconsidered. Gasps. 2 people clapped before stopping themselves. Darren opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Goldman stepped forward again. Any further questions should be directed to legal. I turned, stepped off the stage. The room didn't move. Behind me, Darren's face was pale. His shoulders curled forward. He looked smaller. I passed the front row. The project manager stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Outside, the wind had picked up. I tightened my coat, walked down the steps, and nodded to Goldman. Phase 1, I said. He smiled. Clean execution. The car was waiting. I slid into the back seat and closed the door. As we pulled away, I looked through the tinted window at the office tower behind me. Darren stood in the lobby, motionless, one hand pressed to the glass. He didn't wave. I didn't either. I turned away. Home was waiting. And I still had keys he didn't know about. I taped the notice to the door myself. 1 strip across the top. 1 across the bottom. Legal-sized, printed on thick paper. No signature needed, just the Vaughn Trust seal in black ink. The door shut behind me with a soft click. I locked it from the inside. 2 hours later, I heard Darren's key fumble in the lock. Then a pause. Then again harder this time. Nothing. He knocked, then pounded. Mom? I didn't answer. He kept banging, then silence. Then his voice low-sharp, cracking. What the hell is this? I waited. Counted. 30 seconds. Then the doorbell. Twice. I opened it a sliver. Looked him in the eye. You've been served, I said. He laughed. A short, bitter sound. Served what notice of removal? 72 hours. You're kidding. No. His jaw worked like he wanted to bite something. This is still my address. No, I said. It never was. Madeline appeared behind him. Hair wet, robe on. Her face dropped when she saw the notice. You're evicting us. I'm removing unauthorized occupants, I said. The trust owns this property, not you. Darren shoved his phone forward. You can't do this. I'll call a lawyer. Good, I said. He can explain the part where the person on the deed wins. I shut the door. Locked it again. No shouting this time. Just footsteps retreating down the hallway. Upstairs, I heard drawers opening. Suitcases. Madeline's voice sharp and clipped. Darren yelling something about entitled nonsense. I let them pack. That night, I took the smaller bedroom. I left the master suite as it was half-emptied, closet doors flung open, hangers still swaying. I sat at the kitchen table, flipped on the lamp, and opened the small notepad. Day 1. Exit in motion. I drank coffee cold. Let it sit while I stared out the window. They didn't come back until the next afternoon. Madeline entered first. Said nothing. Walked straight to the closet. Darren stood in the doorway. You've lost your mind. No, I said. I just found the key again. He paced. Tried to spin it into guilt. Dad would have never let this happen. Dad didn't leave you the keys, I said. He left them to me. You're destroying everything. I'm resetting it. He threw his hands up. I gave you a place in this life, and this is how you thank me. I looked at him. You gave me a corner. I built the building. Madeline reappeared with a duffel. She didn't look at either of us. They left at 10:04 a.m. No goodbye, just a slammed door and silence. I stood at the threshold, picked up the notice they'd left on the ground, folded it, tossed it in the trash. Then I walked back into the quiet. No footsteps, no raised voices, no closed door whispers, just the steady hum of my own breathing. And the house finally still. I clicked the link 3 times. The headline stared back in bold font: Clarice Vaughn, majority owner, resumes control of Vaughn Enterprises. No mention of Darren. No mention of Madeline. Not even in the footnotes. The article opened with a short summary detailing the recent shareholder meeting, the confirmation of legal ownership, the reappointment of legacy leadership. I kept reading. My name repeated 4 times in the first paragraph. Legacy, matriarch, visionary. Words they used for statues. I wasn't flattered, just satisfied. I forwarded the link to Goldman with 1 word approved. An hour later, it hit the business wire. Then the city outlets. The calls started before noon. Investors, old colleagues, a woman I hadn't spoken to since 2009. I kept responses short. Yes, I'm back. Yes, the trust is intact. No, I won't be taking interviews. At 2:15 p.m., the doorbell rang. Courier, a sleek white envelope with no return address. Inside, a single typed page. Request for comment. Clarice Vaughn transition. I smiled. The media wanted the story now. I tossed the envelope in the drawer and brewed a fresh pot of coffee. At 4:03, I logged into the company's official press channel. Typed carefully. No fluff, no drama. Vaughn Enterprises confirms the legal reinstatement of Clarice Vaughn as majority owner and chairwoman, effective immediately. All transitional decisions adhere to trust governance and corporate bylaws. Future operations will honor the company's original values. No further statements will be made at this time. I read it aloud once, then posted. 10 minutes later, the reposts began. Madeline tried to call, twice. I didn't pick up. By nightfall, Darren texted, "This is insane. You've ruined everything." I stared at the message. Didn't respond. The next one came 30 seconds later. "You think you've won, people will forget you. You're just a footnote." He was wrong. I wasn't a footnote. I was the founder's daughter, the legal owner. The name etched on the first contract, the first letterhead, the first safe key. Darren was a page I'd turned. I powered off my phone, opened the living room windows, let the air move through the curtains like it used to, back when I ran meetings from the kitchen and signed checks with my father's fountain pen. On the counter, a printed copy of the press release curled slightly at the edges. I placed a coaster on top of it, set down my cup. The ink didn't smudge. My name held firm. I stood in the doorway and listened to nothing. No laughter I didn't trust. No footsteps that hesitated when I entered. Just the steady tick of the kitchen clock and the sound of the city remembering who built the empire. I silenced the phone. Buzz. Pause. Buzz again. I flipped it face down. Let it vibrate against the table like a wasp trying to sting through glass. Darren's name flashed every time. Sometimes with a number. Sometimes no caller ID. I wasn't interested in either. I filled the kettle, waited for the hiss. Buzz. Voicemail. Another buzz. Then a text. Pick up. I'm serious. You can't just shut me out. I could. I poured the water, let the steam rise, watched it curl above the sink. Buzz, you're making a mistake. You've embarrassed us both. The only mistake was trusting him too long. I brewed coffee. No sugar, no cream, black. I liked the bitterness now. It fit the hour. Buzz, we need to talk. I didn't mean for it to go this far. He had meant it. Every step, every smug smile at the table, every time he waved off my voice, my rights, my name. Buzz, please, just 5 minutes. I took the mug, walked to the window. The city moved below me unaware. Lights blinked in offices I once worked in, contracts I once wrote. I had signed payroll during 3 recessions, held the company through tax audits, internal cuts, 2 lawsuits. Darren had never known those parts. He'd walked in just before the ribbon cuttings. Now the ribbon had snapped. Buzz. I walked over, picked up the phone, held it, read through the chain. You ruined everything. You can't do this. You've gone too far. Why are you doing this to me? None of them asked how I felt. I set the phone down, walked to the drawer, pulled out the folder marked Final Phase. Inside, amended board structure, property maintenance orders, personal security contacts, a notarized copy of the new trust directive. The plan was done. Executed. Locked. I sipped my coffee. Let the silence expand. Buzz. Madeline's left. She blames me. Are you happy now? I wasn't happy. But I wasn't hurt anymore. He had burned the bridge. I just made sure he couldn't swim back across. I placed the phone in the drawer, closed it. No more buzzing. Just the echo of a man realizing no one was listening anymore. I turned the lamp off, walked to the bedroom, closed the door behind me, and for the first time in weeks, slept without flinching. I signed the papers without hesitation. 3 copies, initialed every page. Goldman nodded beside me, his pen clicking after each stroke. This locks it, I asked. It does, he said. Irrevocable. The shares bypass any family claim. No challenge will hold. I sat back, exhaled. The morning had started early. I woke before dawn, brewed coffee, ironed my blouse, and reviewed every line of the agreement. Twice. A portion of my shares, 40%, moved into a community foundation, a trust designed for young women entering business without family backing. No Vaughn would ever touch it. The rest stayed with me. Enough to vote. Enough to lead. Darren would find nothing in the will. No clause. No loophole. No surprise payout tucked away for redemption. I watched Goldman slide the documents into a sealed folder. Delivery goes out today, courier's already waiting. I nodded. Good. We didn't speak for a moment. He looked down at his notes. I reached for my bag. You're sure you don't want to leave something behind? He asked gently. I am. I stood, straightened my coat. Darren was given time, access, a roof, a voice in the room. He used every one of those to push me out. This isn't revenge, it's protection. He nodded once. You're clear. The ride home was quiet. I didn't look at my phone. I stepped into the penthouse just as the light turned golden across the windows. I poured coffee, not out of habit, but out of certainty. In the hallway, the framed picture of my father still hung, black suit, wide shoulders, thick glasses. Behind him, the first storefront. He once told me, build something that can outlive betrayal. I used to think he meant the business. Now I understood he meant the self. The phone buzzed once, then stopped. I didn't check. I walked to the filing cabinet, slid the top drawer open, and replaced the old trust document with the new one. Labeled it, Legacy, Final. I closed the drawer, sat at the table, no trembling, no weight pressing on my chest, just the sound of a home no longer shared. I looked around the room, no voices, no raised eyebrows, no hands reaching for what wasn't theirs, only mine. The coffee cooled beside me. I took another sip. Still strong, still bitter. Still exactly how I liked it. The sun shifted higher. I stood, pulled open the cupboard, reached for the mug at the back, clean ceramic, unused for years. Set it gently on the counter. Tomorrow I would pour into it and remember what it meant to start fresh with no apologies. I opened the balcony door. Cool air brushed past me. The city below hummed awake but distant. I stepped out barefoot, set the coffee down first, then lowered myself into the chair. The mug sat steady on the small table, steam curling from it in soft spirals. One word faced me: clean, bold, still mine. I wrapped both hands around it, felt the warmth pulse through my fingers. The skyline stretched wide, concrete glass ambition. I used to watch it wondering how long I could stay above it. Now I didn't need to wonder. Everything here was mine again. Not because I shouted, not because I begged, but because I stayed. Stayed quiet, stayed sharp, stayed watching while they underestimated me again and again. I took a sip. The bitterness had softened. Maybe it was the beans. Maybe it was me. A pigeon landed on the railing, tilted its head, watched me like it expected crumbs. I offered none, just silence. Inside the apartment was clean. No clutter, no arguments echoing down the hall, no passive notes, no extra shoes by the door. The quiet wasn't lonely. It was earned. I thought of Darren, wherever he was now. His name scrubbed from the company record. His voice absent from the calls. His access revoked, erased, undone. He had bet on noise. I had built my life on substance. I drank again. The chair creaked as I leaned back. Sunlight touched the tops of the buildings. Morning moved forward. Somewhere they were still talking, trying to rewrite the story, trying to spin it. But stories don't change the ending when the ink has dried. And mine had. The deed, the shares, the trust, the quiet apartment, the mug. I reached forward, tapped the ceramic lightly. Still mine. And nothing, no voice, no vote, no betrayal could take it from me again.